Hi, this is Leslie from Silver Lining Knitting. This video is the first in a series on software for creating knitting charts. Because of the complicated patterns I like to knit and the way my brain works, I knit almost entirely from charts. I also do a lot of adapting of patterns, so I make a lot of my own charts. In this video series, I'll demonstrate several software options for creating knitting charts and try to pick one that I can stick with. Hopefully you'll find one that works for you as well. First, let me explain the features that are important to me, which I'll be looking for in each of these programs. I do a lot of different kinds of knitting, from lace to brioche to color work and various kinds of cables. So I look for an extensive library of stitch symbols and color options. Because I use colored stitch markers on my loom pegs to keep track of patterns, I need a tool for marking columns on the charts. And these tools can usually be used for marking pattern repeats as well. An essential for time saving is a mechanism for selecting, copying, pasting, and mirroring sections of the chart. It's also important to me to have a working mode which shows me the row I'm currently knitting. And it's nice to have some good options for exporting charts, including symbol keys, written instructions, and notes. These are important if you want to publish or sell patterns. And of course, a reasonable price is always important. For a few years, I've been using an app called Knitting Chart, which has worked well for me. It's only available for Apple devices, which are being phased out of my household, so I'm looking for some alternatives, and this video series is going to be a part of that search. There's a free version of this app with very limited features, and the pro version is only $19.99, which I've found definitely worth the cost. I'll post a link to the website in the comments. From there you can find YouTube tutorials and follow a link to the App Store. Now let's dig into the software. This is the main page of the app where you can see all your projects. The menu on the left has some storage and interface options, which I haven't really explored. I've stored all my projects on this iPad. It does have some extra memory on it, but I never run out of memory, and I have 112 projects. Many of them have more than one chart in them, so you may not need these memory options. When you open a project, you can scroll between the different charts using these arrows. And over here you have settings for the chart, which can be changed, and then file options for saving and exporting. And this is the stitch library. Then over here we have undo and redo buttons and a scroll option, but I usually use the pinch to scroll. I find that easier. On the bottom, there are options for adding different things to the chart, and down here you can switch between editing and working mode. I've gone back to the main page to show you how to create a new chart. We'll start with this plus button. You have several options. You can design a rectangular chart with a certain number of rows and columns. You can convert a PDF to a color chart or an image. You can create a simple row counter. You can add notes to an existing PDF, or you can do a free-form crochet chart. I usually use this first option, and I will give it a name and go to the next step. Now you can choose some different options for what's available on your chart. I'm going to use the knitting. If you add in color work, it will sometimes deactivate this button, and you do want that highlighted because then you'll see the stitch symbols as you're working a little bit easier. We'll go to the next step. Here's where we set the rows and columns count, and then you can choose what kind of rows you want. You can do in the round or flat. It can do right side only. The grouped by two is a nice option if you're doing brioche. I usually do a flat chart, although I've used the other options as well. And then you have some options for column numbers as well. There is a gauge setting tool, but I have not actually used that because I tend to use my charts with different sizes of looms and yarn, so I haven't messed around with that very much. Then you click Create and you get your blank chart. You can jump right into adding symbols to your chart using this menu down here, or you can start by creating a favorites list if you want. This is handy because it will show up on all of your projects, so if there are stitches you use often, you can add them in here. You go to the complete list, choose the stitch you want, and hold your finger over it for a little bit until this option comes up. Then you can add it to your favorites. And then I have a favorites list. You can also change the descriptions of the stitches if you want to do that as well, and that's kind of handy to have. But when I'm adding symbols to the chart, I usually use this bottom option. So I'll choose the symbol I want, and then you can do individual cells, or you can drag across multiple cells to add the symbol. You can erase mistakes using the undo button this way, or you can use this little erase tool for specific spots. So it's pretty easy to add the symbols. You also have options for different colors. So you can change the background color, and that's how you would add colors to your chart for color work or Fair Isle or something like that. And then you can change the color of the symbol. I've used that on occasion. If I don't have exactly the symbol I want, I'll use a color variation, but it's a little bit hard to see the color of the symbol, so I don't use that too often unless I have to. But those are good options to have. This select tool is a really useful shortcut for adding to the chart. I can highlight a square or rectangular section of the chart and copy the stitches. Then if I move the selection, I can just drag it to another spot and paste them. So I've repeated a section of the chart. I can also mirror it either horizontally or vertically or both. So that's a really useful shortcut for adding to your chart. The other option for that icon is what I use to mark my columns, which correspond to stitch markers on my loom. It's a really useful way for keeping track of where you are in your pattern. You'll choose this option, and then I usually pick the rectangle. Then it will create a square on the chart, which I can size to the column that I want to mark. Then I can change the color of the marking, which, you know, I use several different colors because I have different colored stitch markers. I can change how thick the line is so that it fits better on the chart. Usually what I'll do is create several of those. Whoops. It's a little quirky till you get used to how it works. So I can create several different columns of different colors. I can do another one over here. And what I'll do is set them the way I want them, and then what I can do is extend all of them up to the top of the chart at one time. Then I don't have to scroll around the chart as much. And that's how I set up the stitch markers. that help me keep track of a complicated pattern that I'm knitting. Once you've finished your chart, you can use this little icon to switch to knitting mode, which will show you just the row that you're working on. Up here you can change the highlight color. I usually try to make sure it's not a color that matches any of my stitch markers, so I can distinguish. You can also use some options down here to add just a row counter and a timer. You can see just the row you're working on, and you can also see the written instructions. And these arrows will move you up or down a row, so you can see where the written instructions change. There's also, you can just highlight a single stitch, so if you have to stop in the middle of the row, you can mark where you are. I've found this app to be very easy to use, and I recommend it for several reasons. The price is really reasonable with no recurring subscription. It has a pretty good stitch library, including brioche and cable options. There are several time-saving features for chart creation and a good working mode. The downsides to this app are that it's only available for Apple devices, and it has somewhat limited export options. The next video in this series will explore an online app called Chartminder. Don't forget to comment with questions or suggestions, like and share the video, and subscribe to my channel to get notified when I post something new.